Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Books and Tea with KD. I'm your host, KD Upton, and today we're diving deep into a topic that's not only spooky, but also has a huge inspiration for my novel Murder in the Orkneys. I've got my tea ready, hope you do too, because we're talking about ghosts in Scottish folklore. Ghosts that have haunted the lands, castles, and people of Scotland for centuries, with tales so chilling they'll make you want to keep the lights on tonight. Now, we all know Scotland has a rich history, steeped in mystery and legends, which was on my previous episode. But as for ghost stories, there's something else, all right. And they're going to take center stage today as we explore a few famous hauntings that might just tie into Murder in the Orkneys. So let's settle in and get spooky. To start, let's talk about one of the most iconic ghost stories in all of Scotland, at least from my research. It's the White Lady. Some call her the Grey Lady of Glamis Castle. Glamis Castle, for those who are not in the know, is one of Scotland's most famous castles. It's the ancestral home of the Earls of Strathmore, and it's said to be one of the most haunted places in the country. The White Lady is said to be the spirit of Lady Janet Douglas, who was accused of witchcraft by none other than King James V. Why? What did King James have against this woman to want her burned at the stake as a witch? Because that's what they did back then. Let's start with who Lady Janet Douglas was at the time. From her title, we can assume a woman of means, some type of importance, and we'd be correct. Although, how much power did women actually wield back then? But that's another story entirely. Anyway, this woman happened to be the sister of the 6th Earl of Angus, Archibald Douglas. This man was stepfather to James prior to James's rule. And gosh, he wasn't a good one. Yes, the incorrigible wretch of a stepdad that had locked James up, soon to be King of Scotland, King James V, he locked him away. Archibald Douglas had married the Queen Dowager, which is the widow of King Edward IV of Scotland. He did this in 1514, much to the chagrin of the jealous nobles at the time. In 1515, the second Duke of Albany arrived under the request of the Scottish Parliament and subsequently imprisoned Margaret Tudor, who was the Queen Dowager. She was imprisoned in Stirling Castle, which is a famous castle. She lost regency over James V, her own child, due to remarriage. Margaret, sister to Henry VII, she fled to England to escape imprisonment, leaving her 2 sons behind. However, James wouldn't be prisoner for too long. In 1524, after a few foibles, one being a failed war with England, Albany retreated to France, and then James escaped. But the damage had already been done. James's disdain for the House of Douglas was cemented, and in December of 1528, Janet was summoned for treason. Yikes. Janet had married John Lyon, the 6th Lord of Glamis, and she was accused of killing him at the time in 1528. When she was acquitted of that, Janet was once again accused in 1537 by James. This time, Janet was convicted of trying to kill the king with poison. I think this man probably would have kept going until he got her found guilty. She was accused of witchcraft and was locked in the dungeons of Edinburgh Castle in Scotland. And while it was difficult to prove witchcraft at the time, James resorted to torturing her servants and family members until she confessed. And on July 17th, 1537, she was burned at the stake. So again, I just think this man would have gone to any lengths to get her to die. But here's where it gets eerie. Many say her spirit returned to Glamis Castle, and to this day, visitors report seeing her ghost wandering the hallways, wearing a long white gown. Tragic ends make for a restless spirit, at least that's what I've heard. And what's especially fascinating about this story is the idea of wronged women coming back to haunt their persecutors, an idea that plays a role in Murder in the Orkneys too. Without giving too much away, the novel also features a character who seeks justice, even from beyond the grave. Moving from castles to graveyards, because what would a ghost story podcast be without one? Next up is the infamous Mackenzie Poltergeist in Greyfriars Kirkyard, Edinburgh. Greyfriars is one of the most well-known cemeteries in Scotland, and it's home to one of the most active paranormal sites as well, the Black Mausoleum. About a 10-minute walk from Edinburgh Castle, this is where the Mackenzie Poltergeist is said to reside. The ghost is believed to be that of Sir George Mackenzie, a 17th century lawyer responsible for persecuting the Covenanters, which was a group of Presbyterian rebels. They'd been held prisoner on the Kirk grounds in 1679, where Mackenzie, named the Lord Advocate of Scotland, if I'm correct, where he tortured and executed them for their faith. It is said Sir George Mackenzie was so cruel to these people that he earned the nickname Bloody Mackenzie. But why haunt this place? What was it about this place? Legend has it his spirit was disturbed when a homeless man broke into his tomb in the late 1990s. I think it was like 1998. It was a homeless man who was looking for shelter. But curiosity got the better of him, and we all know curiosity killed the cat, right? And when he cracked open one of the tombs in the Mackenzie's tomb, not necessarily Mackenzie's tomb, but one of them, the ground caved in, and he dropped onto bodies of plague victims that had been discarded there hundreds of years before. Poor guy, the corpses were still in a state of decompensation because there was a vacuum seal. So when they were tossed in there back during the bubonic plague, they sealed the chamber. So it was vacuum sealed. So when he fell in, they were still in that decompensation. That would have been so disgusting and so scary, so frightening. Needless to say, that man left in a hurry, and I don't know what happened to that man. I hope he didn't get bubonic plague from that. But since that time, so not right after Mackenzie's death, but since 1998, people visiting the cemetery there have reported strange occurrences, scratches, bruises, being kicked, feeling sick, struck hard by an unseen force, and even fainting spells. It's one of the only poltergeists in Scotland known for physically attacking people, which makes it all the more terrifying. There are all sorts of YouTube videos on it and tour groups, so if you're interested and want to tour it, go ahead. If you're ever in the area and want a good fright, look these tour groups up. Also, because I think they said that there's over like 500 documented attacks in that area of that cemetery, so they blocked it off. It's really that bad. But if you're in for a good fright and you're into that sort of thing, there are tour groups. So if you're ever in the area, Edinburgh, Scotland, find one of those groups. If you're a fan of Murder in the Orkneys, you'll recognize how this idea of vengeful spirits from the past can haunt and even hurt those in the present. Again, no spoilers. Let's shift gears to another famous spectral figure, the Green Lady of Stirling Castle. I mentioned Stirling Castle, very famous. Stirling Castle, perched high above the town of Stirling, has seen its fair share of bloodshed and intrigue, and it's no surprise that it's said to be haunted. Thinking about it, I would think that a lot of castles would be haunted. just would think so. The Green Lady is believed to have been a servant of Mary, Queen of Scots. Legend has it she was very superstitious and believed the queen would succumb to a fire in her bedchamber on a specific night. That night, she vowed to stay awake, but the poor girl failed to achieve her initiative and she fell asleep, supposedly in so doing knocking over a candle that set flame to the room. The queen survived, but the girl died in the incident. There are records to show that a fire like this did happen, but sadly the presence of the girl hasn't been confirmed. Doesn't mean that she wasn't there, but it's not been confirmed. But supposedly, ever since this incident, her ghost has been seen wandering the castle, often in a green dress, watching over visitors. What makes the Green Lady particularly interesting, at least to me, is that she's often seen as a harbinger of bad things to come. Usually if she's seen, a fire or some other catastrophe occurs shortly thereafter. The castle still serves as a garrison, and there's an account of a chef sensing someone watching him, and when he turned around, he witnessed her green translucent form, whereby she vanished, and he then subsequently fainted. And I think a lot of us probably would too if we saw a green woman, see-through one, standing behind us. While most ghost stories are about vengeance, unfinished business, the Green Lady is a guardian, I think, of sorts. That idea of protection, protective spirits, ghosts who aren't necessarily evil, but still tied to our world. This is something I play with in Murder in the Orkneys. Not all spirits are out for blood. Some may be simply trying to protect or guide us, to tell us, hey, something bad's about to happen. Of course, we can't talk about Scottish ghost stories without mentioning Edinburgh Castle and the Phantom Piper. Now, bagpipes are already, some would classify it as a haunting sound. I love the sound of bagpipes. My ancestry is Scottish, very, very much Scottish. So I love the bagpipes. Some people consider it haunting, but this story takes it to a whole other level. According to legend, many years ago, tunnels were discovered underneath Edinburgh Castle. To see how far the tunnels went, a piper was sent down to play his pipes as he walked through them, while people above ground followed the sound. But partway through, the piping suddenly stopped. A search party went in to find this lad, but he was never seen again. Then they sealed the tunnel. To this day, people claim they can still hear the distant sound of bagpipes coming from beneath the castle. In Murder in the Orkneys, sound plays an important role in building atmosphere. Sometimes it's what you can't see that's the most terrifying, and the Phantom Piper is a perfect example of that. The idea that you can hear a spirit but not see it adds to tension, and it adds suspense, which is something I love incorporating into my own writing. Scotland just isn't about ghost stories, though. There's a deep-rooted belief in second sight, which my previous episode dabbled in, which is the ability to see spirits and predict the future. In Scottish folklore, those with second sight are said to be able to see the future or communicate with the dead. It's passed down through generations, but as I've stated in a different episode, in Scotland this is seen as a curse or burden, unlike some other cultures. This concept does play a huge role in Murder in the Orkneys, especially with one of the characters who provides cryptic clues to the protagonist, Daisy Day. The idea of someone having this extraordinary ability adds an extra layer of mystery to the story as well, and I just kind of wanted to put that in there again because I just love the idea of second sight. Before we wrap up today's episode, I wanted to talk just a little bit about how these ghost stories and legends influenced Murder in the Orkneys and some of my other books, Ominous Visions, Grave Decisions, even the Caitlin Doll mysteries. I have a dabble of this magical, extra kind of otherworldly experience. From the remote setting of the Orkney Islands to the presence of ancient folklore, and not just in the Orkneys. The novel and my novels are infused with Scottish myth, ghostly lore, supernatural, paranormal events. One of the biggest inspirations was the idea of how the past can continue to influence the present. Whether it's through vengeful spirits, protected ghosts, or even through second sight. Scottish folklore has this recurring theme of the dead never truly leaving us, and that's definitely something I wanted to explore in my novels. Also, my heritage ancestry extends far back into Scotland, and I am born to a Norwegian, my father's Norwegian American. I've been able to trace my lineage, though, on the Scottish side through one of my parents back to Robert the Bruce. Believe it or not, I was very shocked to see that too, and it's legitimate documentation. And it was a shock when I found that out, that I had ancestors buried too in the very cathedral I included in Murder in the Orkneys. So it's a shock to be related to Robert the Bruce, and it was a shock then to find out that I have ancestors buried in St. Magnus Cathedral Cemetery. I even found out about it while I was in the middle of writing the book. I found out about this ancestry at that point. I found out about these graves at that point. I was completely stunned. Talk about shock. If you do believe in these sorts of things, which I do, it's kind of like maybe my deceased relatives planted this idea in my mind prior to even writing the books. It's definitely food for thought. It's one thing I don't take lightly. Lots of strange occurrences have happened in my lifetime, though, to just write it off. I don't write those occurrences off. So am I a believer in a ghost world? Yes. I've said that before. Yes, I am. I'm proud to say that 2 of my relatives are indeed buried in St. Magnus Cathedral Cemetery. One of them, I found out, worked for the church. Wonders never cease. And if I have my way, I'll visit someday. That's on my bucket list of things to do. So who knows, maybe I'll video that and post that and talk about that later. You'll have to stay tuned to find out. Well, that's it for today's deep dive into ghosts and Scottish folklore. I hope you've enjoyed these stories as much as I do, and I hope you can see how they tie into my writing, especially Murder in the Orkneys. If you're interested in learning more, or you want to pick up a copy of it, you can find it on my website at www.kduptonwrites.com. And if you wanted signed copies or merchandise, let me know. I'm developing some of that stuff, the merchandise too. We'll work something out. My books are also available on most major platforms for the time being. I plan on announcing something big in the near future about that too, though. I plan on doing something a little different, so you'll have to wait and see. Also, don't forget, if you love a good ghost story, keep your eyes peeled for future episodes of Books and Tea with KD, where we'll explore more haunted tales, writing tips, behind the scenes looks at my upcoming projects, and even author interviews. Until next time, keep sipping your tea and don't let the ghosts keep you up at night. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode.